What's up? Good morning and War Eagle War Report family. Your guy Ike Jones back with another morning drop. Today, the recruiting services announced their final ratings for 2024, and Auburn only has one composite five-star left on the list. Let's talk about it. Y'all know how we do right here, War Report style. Drop it on them.
You are now listening to the War Report. Drop.
Morning drop. It is January the 23rd, and hopefully everybody is having a good day. Hopefully your week is starting off well here on a Tuesday. Going up on a Tuesday right here inside the War Report. That's an old reference now, huh? It's all right. I earned these grades in the beard, so I'm gonna roll with it. But yeah, hopefully everybody's doing all right today. Please be doing the necessary. I'll know sharing the video out there on social media, like the video, subscribe to the channel. All of those things help grow this wonderful community that we have going on. Now y'all know I'm not super big into any of the recruiting stuff and the rankings. I just want to see guys come in and, play well regardless of what they're rated. But it is a thing, and we're going to talk about it here. Now that all of the all-star games are done and people have completed their final seasons before heading to their respective campuses, the recruiting rankings come and they do their final analysis of what everybody is. And there's only one composite five-star in this Auburn class right now, and that is Cam Coleman. Now, there are, in 247, I think there's two currently rated as five-star. Amars Williams, I think, is still a five-star over on 247, and Cam Coleman as well. But Rivals, just the lone five-star for Cam Coleman. But there have been some movement and, risings and fallings amongst the rankings. And I want to specifically look at 247 just because Rivals has not released their full list of their, top rankings and where everybody shakes out finally in the national rankings. I believe they are going to be rolling that out over the process of this week. So they'll have their next rollout sometime today, and then they'll do final rankings for position groups and all that. Rivals does this whole week-long thing with theirs. But 247 did give us the goods as far as all of the risers and fallers. So I want to take a look at that specifically. And we will start with the guys who, since they last did a ranking, actually moved up in the ratings for Auburn. And first and foremost, I'll start with the guy who probably did the biggest leap, and that's going to be Walker White, who was rated number 97 and moved all the way up to number 41 in the 247 rankings. Walker White did himself a lot of favors, and I'm reading this actually from an article from Christian Clemente on 247 talking about this. I'll link that article for you guys in the in the comments below the video, or in the description of the video, I should say, so you can take it out, take a look at yourself. He went from previous ranking of 97 all the way up to number 41, really off the strength of what he showed in the All-American Bowl. If you guys remember, we posted the video of all of his throws from that bowl game. Now, I mean, the numbers aren't going to be staggering, but I think people were impressed by his arm strength and his build, and some of the things that he was able to do on different types of throws, whether it was rolling out or his ability to hit the deep shot up the sidelines, what he was doing in the practices. Off the strength of that, Walker White was able to climb significantly in the rankings. And he is listed as a dual threat quarterback. He's actually in the top 100 on ESPN as far as dual threat quarterbacks are concerned as well. So Walker White's done himself a lot of favors in the rankings of late. And I think a lot of Auburn fans are very excited about the prospect of Walker White. Of course, they're excited about the prospect of Walker White. We'll be talking a little bit more about that as we get into this week. We've probably got some content coming about Walker White specifically, so you guys stay on the lookout for that. But he has definitely done himself some favors in terms of the recruiting rankings, and he has gotten himself into the position now where he's in the conversation for Auburn fans to say, is it possible that Walker White could compete for QB1 snaps in his freshman season? We haven't seen that happen at Auburn since Bo Nix, and it doesn't happen across the country often, right? We talk about game one QB1 reps for a true freshman. That is not something that happens often anywhere in the country, and not just at Auburn. So looking forward to what happens with that in the quarterback situation going into the spring. Next up on the list, as far as risers are concerned, in terms of 247 rankings, you got Bryce Cain. Bryce Cain is a guy who has done himself some favors out there in the recruiting services. Again, just kind of taking a look at what was said by Christian Clemente in his article where he outlines all of this, going up from 158 to 151. He was a guy who got in early during bowl practices, and I think people just kind of started to realize the kind of talent that he has when in the camps and everything that he was going to. In his final season, he proved to be a playmaker, so he rose in the rankings a little bit himself. And there are people who are around right now. So he's going through practices or workouts right now, and he's turning heads in workouts right now here in Auburn as well. Bryce Cain looking to be somebody who could potentially be a contributing factor for Auburn in his freshman season. Definitely will be getting more into some information about the wide receiver core in general, but be talking about Bryce Cain and what he could potentially bring to this wide receiver core. And speaking of wide receivers, the next guy on the list that's gotten a bit of a bump in 247 is Malcolm Simmons. Bryce Cain is at 151. Malcolm Simmons now at 150, going up from 157. So both of them went up, the same number of spots, 158 to 151 for Bryce Cain, 157 to 150 for Malcolm Simmons, another guy who his speed has been impressive for people in the practices that he's gone to and in the All-Star games. He's shown an impressive amount of ability to just take the top off of a defense, right? So Malcolm Simmons has done himself some favors out here in these recruiting rankings. Next up, Amaris Williams. He has risen from 34 to 30. So he is now inside the top 30 in the 247 rankings, and he's another guy who kind of was a late bloomer in terms of people really gravitating towards him, but he has now bumped up a few spots. He's also an early enrollee in school, and him being now in the top 30, I think that should put him as a 5-star. I talked about that just a minute ago, like he's the other 5-star that should be on this list now for 247. And so now Auburn, again, in the 247 rankings, has another 5-star in this class, and he's a guy who Auburn needs to be able to rush the passer. And Jamonte Waller is on board, and he's a dynamic pass rushing guy. If you look at outside linebackers, you've got DeMarcus Riddick, who is, potentially going to be a guy who could be doing that. But having another guy who can get out there and really actively get towards the passer. Williams is a guy who I'm expecting for Auburn to figure out how to get involved in this defense early. I just don't know that there's enough depth. And listen, we don't even know what the defensive scheme is going to be, and I'm going to use the term jack, right? But it could be an outside linebacker. It could be, a defensive end. I don't know what it's going to be depending upon who the defensive coordinator is going to be. But he fits the mold of a guy that you want to come in and be able to get active in that and be able to set the edge and go get after the quarterback. So his rise in the rankings is something that Auburn fans should be happy to see. And then last on the list, but definitely not least, because he is the highest rated on the list, didn't make as big a jump, but he's now in the top 5, and that's Cam Coleman, the wide receiver. He is moved up from number 8 to number 5 overall in the 247 list. And Cam Coleman is one of the guys that people are super excited about. Big catch radius guy. I don't need to say too much more about Cam Coleman. It's not going to be a surprise that people are excited about the potential for Cam Coleman. He is another early enrollee for Auburn, so he is there on campus right now, getting it in, and hopefully he has an opportunity to come in and contribute early in a wide receiver core that lacked the ability to really dominate in the outside receiver, and what Coach Hugh Freeze really wants to do with his outside receivers is have guys with a big catch radius, 50-50 ball guy. Cam Coleman, when he was out there at the All-Star practices, was a guy, that's what he really did, was his ability to make those contested catches. And I think that that's something that you're going to need to be able to have in this offense for Coach Hugh Freeze, just as a release valve for your quarterback on those, third and mediums where you just really want to step back and throw a fade route to somebody. We tried that a couple of times in a couple of different games and just never were able to get the hookups done. Cam Coleman is a guy who can come in immediately and start doing that sort of thing for your team in those situations. So congrats to all of those young men who have made the move upward in the recruiting rankings. Now, on the opposite end of that spectrum, there are some Auburn Tigers who are coming in who have dropped in the rankings, right? And for whatever reasons that's happened. So let's start with the one that I think people are going to be most bent out of shape about, and that's probably Perry Thompson, who was number 26 overall, was a 5-star because he was in the top 30, and now is bumped down to a 4-star in 247. Again, quoting the 247 rankings here, from 26 down to 38. So Perry Thompson loses his 5-star status on 247. But he's still inside the top 40 and the number 8 overall receiver in the country. A slight dip for him. Reasons that people have been citing for Perry Thompson is just that he seems to be a little bit more raw as far as his route running ability. I have some cut-ups from him at the Under Armour All-Star game that I've yet to put out, but I'll probably do some of that stuff and just talk about the reps that he had. I don't think he had bad reps during that, and he didn't, that I can recall, have any drops. I have to go back. It's been a week or so since I've actually watched some of that stuff. But he did have some situations where some of the routes that he was running, he wasn't on the same page with the quarterback. I don't know what the deal was with that. But physically, Perry Thompson is a guy who looks like he is ready to go day one. Not as crisp a route runner, but he is a physical beast out there. Definitely has a lot of speed for his size, especially for his size. Now, he's got speed in general, but for him to be such a large receiver, he's definitely moving out there. But did take a dip in his recent rankings, and hopefully, you saw the documentary that he did about his whole situation. Hopefully, that's something that motivates him. He comes in hungry. Now, he is unfortunately not going to be there in the spring. He'll be there in the summer, but hopefully this is a situation where he sees this and he says to himself, okay, let me give myself a little motivation to work a little harder when I come in here. Hopefully that gives him a little chip on his shoulder. Next up here, DeMarcus Riddick, who was number 55 overall, dropped to number 69 overall in the rankings. And I just need to see if John Brandon is in here because I just said that, and I know that. Listen, I didn't make the rankings. He just is where he is. But yeah, DeMarcus Riddick from 55 to 69. He was also at the All-American Bowl, and I guess just, his productivity over the last year, his senior year, and what he did in the bowl and in the All-Star stuff got him in a place where he dropped a little bit in the rankings. Maybe some other guys looked more impressive during that, but he did drop a little bit. Next up, the aforementioned, when I talked about edge and, potential jack guys, Jamonte Waller, he went from 73 all the way down to 105 in the ranking, fell outside of the top 100. He was supposed to be at the Under Armour game, but then ended up dropping out of that. But he is an early enrollee on campus, and he is ready to go out there. He talked about his decision to come early because and move over to Auburn. He wanted to be able to get in and really work with Jalen McLeod, who is the jack rusher. He thought he liked what he saw from him, and he was looking forward to coming and getting under his tutelage. So hopefully those two young men are getting out there and getting to work right now along with Williams, and they are figuring out how to terrorize quarterbacks coming up here soon. Last on the list of fallers is from 123 to 135 is Joseph Phillips. Joseph Phillips, another guy who was here for bowl practice. He is another person who's slated to potentially be an edge rusher for Auburn in this upcoming class. And he's going to be a guy I think that's going to be crucial for Auburn as far as depth is concerned with just getting in some sub-package stuff. He's been working really hard right now during the early enrollee portion. Again, he was at the bowl practice, but he's been in here for the spring workouts. And so I'm looking for a lot of these guys to contribute immediately. I think that was part of, specifically for the guys along the defense, part of the draw for them to come to Auburn was an ability to come in and contribute in year one as a freshman. So looking forward to seeing what all of those young men are able to do. Despite what their final rankings are, Auburn is still rated as the number 8 overall class on both 247 and Rivals, and they have quite a bit inside of the ESPN 300. When you go and look at the position rankings and all of the top 100 for each position, Auburn has a couple of guys, and I'll put a comprehensive list of those out for each of those different positions here. But at the athlete, cornerback, defensive end, D tackle, linebacker, outside, offensive guard, quarterback, of course, safety, and wide receiver, Auburn has somebody inside the top 100 for the ESPN 300 at all of those positions. And we look forward to what they're going to be able to contribute coming up here in the future. But that's enough of me rambling and talking. I want to see what you all have to say about all of this stuff, and I'm sure you will have much to say about things I didn't even think to talk about. Before we do that, definitely want to give a shout out to show sponsor, and that is the Rogue Shop. Make sure you all head over to rogueshop.com using code RAPPORT. America's #1 online dispensary is Rogue Shop. When you go there, you can find some remedies for sleep, stress, pain, anxiety, all of the above. Rogue Shop's got something for you. Make sure you hit them up. Tell them the War Report sent you using code RAPPORT. All right, let's get over into the comment section and see what you all are talking about this morning. I am sure you have a lot to say, and I am here to talk about it with you. Let's see. Let's get the conversation kicked off with... I wish there was a way I could, filter to the stuff that's about what we're talking about. I love the fact that you guys come in and you talk amongst yourselves because it's a really great community. David Hunt saying a commit to Auburn losing a star. That's nothing. I think he meant new there. I don't know if there's any correlation to the commitment to Auburn and that being the case, but I do know that it's not the first time it's ever happened. I don't track whether it happens to other teams, whether there's risers and fallers based upon their commitment to other teams, but it definitely happens with Auburn folks. So it is what it is. Auburn Dad says Riddick should still be a 5-star. They straight demoted him. It is definitely one of those situations where, I don't follow these young men in their high school careers to see how they're playing during high school and whether or not they've continued to progress throughout their career in high school. But I am happy for the young men who got a bump in the ratings, right? Like, it's not as if everybody who's an Auburn commit just immediately plummeted down the ratings, but there are certain people who did take a hit in their final rankings. And, props to all the young men who were able to still be in the top whatever. Still a great class regardless of where that final ranking is. Jonathan Boyson says Walker White went all the way up to number 5 in the overall quarterback rankings. Definitely, listen, he has impressed some people out there with what he was able to do in his final season. I think he's actually one of the people that once he committed to Auburn and he was continuously in the forefront, people started paying more attention to him. And then he was able to go out there for the Under Armour game and be impressive during practices. So I think he did himself some favors with his Auburn commitment and just him being on the forefront and seeming like a really good leader for that group and how he was able to galvanize and get other guys on board with him in this recruiting class. I think he did himself some favors. Now, I think he would have done that regardless of where he committed, as far as being out there, being a vocal proponent of coming on board with whatever school he went to. So glad that he chose Auburn, glad that he was able to be a part of the recruiting pitch to get some other young men on board with this class. Love what he has been able to do for this recruiting class. Let's see here. A lot of conversation about defensive coordinator. We talked about that a lot yesterday, so you guys can go and check out what we talked about yesterday in regard to that. I was hoping by the time I got on here and talked another day that we wouldn't even have to be talking defensive coordinator anymore, but that's still a conversation that's lingering out there, and I am hoping that saga whatever the reasoning is comes to an end by the end of this week. Let's see here. UC talk. Chris S jumps in and says, nice to see Walker White get the bump up. I seriously hope we don't have to depend on him as a true freshman. Listen, I am not an advocate of throwing a true freshman to the Wolves unless said true freshman is ready to go. And if he's the best guy, true freshman or not, let's get him out there on the field. That's what I'm a proponent of. Whoever the best guy is, let's get him out there on the field. Now, I am leery of saying a true freshman is the best option out there. That will make me nervous. And it's like, okay, so what do we have behind the true freshman if that true freshman, unless that true freshman is just that dude, right? Like if you're that guy, then let's go out here and make it happen. Let's not wait and try to save and redshirt. Now let's just go out here and make it. Listen, 3 good years. By year 3 and he's out of here, hopefully you've got a succession plan for somebody else. But if he's the guy, let him be the guy. So I'm not going to be the one out here lobbying and advocating for a true freshman being the first guy out there, unless, again, that true freshman is that dude. So hopefully they're just allowing those young men to go out there and compete. He is another one that's out there already on campus, and he's already built like a junior, right? Like he's a guy that looks like he's ready to make the leap physically. It's about whether or not he's athletically in the mold of because what tends to happen with some of these guys is athletically they're the best guy on the field in high school, and then once they get around some other people who athletically are closer to them, they're not able to separate themselves because they don't have the other kind of intangible tools, specifically at the quarterback position, about being able to throw with anticipation and kind of understanding, reading coverages, because guys are just faster right now. And you're not going to have as much time in the pocket, and you don't have the speed to get around the edge the same way. And you're not able to run over the DBs and linebackers the same way you were in high school. So, Walker White's a guy who I think is physically he's going to be able to stand up to some of that stuff. Hopefully he's not too willing to go out there and just take punishment and try to run over guys. But if he's able to, from the mental standpoint, be able to grasp the system and be able to know where he needs to go with the football and all those things, let him go out there and play ball, man. So again, I'm not going to be the guy standing on the sidelines banging the table and say he needs to play right now. But if he's the guy, let him be the guy. Let's see. On the opposite side, Young KL said Walker White starting is something I would not be mad at. So there are people on both sides of this argument. Again, I am kind of neutral to it. I'm waiting to see what he actually is able to do. Listen, A-Day is going to be interesting because we think about what the A-Day format was last year, and it was, put a certain number of points on the board and see if they can reach that number. I'm wondering if they're going to still go to that format. Last year, they rotated quarterbacks through. They had 3 quarterbacks in TJ Finley, Robbie Ashford, and Holden Gerner that actually got snaps during the A-Day game last year. You didn't see he wasn't on campus at the time, but now you have 4 quarterbacks that will be on campus that could potentially take snaps. Is Coach Hugh Freeze going to give an opportunity to all of those quarterbacks to at least get a drive? Is it going to be the same format? It's something that they haven't talked about yet, but I'm sure as we get closer to A-Day, they're going to have conversations about what that format is going to be. I'm looking forward to the next press conference when we get an opportunity to ask him those questions. But it's going to be interesting to see what the division of work is going to be for those quarterbacks, considering there's more quarterbacks to work in and there's a lot more young pieces that people are going to be excited to see that have come in and are early enrollees. So that A-Day game should be interesting and a lot to talk about. Chris S. says that Perry didn't have a great year. They ran the ball a lot. Again, I don't keep up with what they do in high school so much. And so, hopefully, again, whatever happened his senior year, it's going to be a motivation for him to come out here and prove some people wrong that he's ready to come and take the reins and be a contributor year one if that is his lot in life. I think that, from an athletic standpoint, he's ready to go. He's just got to clean up some things in some of his technique and really learn the system. It's unfortunate that he's not going to be able to be an early enrollee, but I don't think that that should hinder him from getting in here and getting to work and really contributing if the snaps are available for him. Tony Baker asked, well, what did this do for Auburn's recruiting rankings? I'd rather have the players in the rankings, but curious how that affects the overall rankings. Talked about this a little bit overall. Still number 8 overall in both of the recruiting services. So still in the top 10. And the National Signing Day is coming up. So, if we're able to maintain that top 10 status, that's going to mean that the verbal commitment from Dimitri Nicholas needs to stick. And then if you're able to move up, that means that you've gotten somebody else that wasn't on that original list, because that's the only other commit that still exists right now that Auburn needs to go and get. And of course, everybody knows about the whole situation with Ryan Williams and what he decides to do. Ant Robinson jumps in and says, Riddick did not play linebacker his senior year, and it's crazy how these freshmen that are dropping are the ones getting the most compliments. Listen, what compliments they get at Auburn practice doesn't have very much to do with what their national ranking is. But I do like that these young men are coming in and they're putting in the work for the team already, and they're coming in with a mindset of they're ready to come in and contribute immediately. I think, again, these young men were sold on the idea that they could have a role day one if they came in and worked for it. And so they're ready to get in here and get to it. I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like out there on the field, because that is what ultimately matters. Daniel Moultrie jumps in and says, Ike, will you be going to the game in the airport hangar tomorrow? I am happy to report that is exactly what I plan to do. I will be in on the other side of the state taking a look at Auburn basketball tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to seeing what we're able to do on the road there in Coleman Coliseum. Super chat here from Jamal Pye, who says, Ryan Williams' dad played at Auburn. He is a legacy. That we'll see whether, that's one of the big reasons why people, I think, were most disappointed about Ryan Williams was the fact that he was a legacy and he wasn't giving Auburn an earnest look. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Previous coaching staff, I don't think, put the full court press on Ryan Williams the way that they could have. It is what it is at this point in time. Hopefully Coach Hugh Freeze and company still have last visit that they have for Ryan Williams, and they have the last opportunity to make an impression on him. Of course, just because they get the last visit doesn't mean they get the last word, right? We saw what happened on early signing day with some folks that they felt like they were in a good place with. The coaching staff here at Auburn felt like they were in a good place with, and then ultimately those young men decided to do something else because of some late night maneuverings by some other folks. So definitely not counting any of this stuff as guaranteed to be in the books with any of these young men, but they do have an opportunity to come in and contribute immediately if they make the decision on National Signing Day, being Dimitri Nicholas and Ryan Williams, to compete for a starting position. And I don't know, maybe they have somebody else up their sleeve. Coach Freeze and company, they tend to keep some stuff on the hush, and they make some silent movement. So maybe we'll see something else. But we have a little over 2 weeks. It's February the 7th. So yeah, just a little over 2 weeks before we're able to answer those questions definitively. All right, I'm going to get out of here. I appreciate you guys dropping in here with me. As always, you guys need to head over to the sponsor of the Morning Drop. That is Rogue Shop. Make sure you use code REPORT when you do that. Before you get out of here, like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on podcast, share the podcast, give us that 5-star review. We will be back at you guys tomorrow morning with another drop. But until then, and as always, War Eagle.